You are joining your NAL at ED program annual performance reporting webinar. So today we're just going to get you all trained up for your APR. Make sure everybody has their audio on. We have a couple more people joining. If you could just maybe in the chat take a moment to just let us know where you're zooming in from. Maybe share like how your day is going, and then we'll get started. Before we get into the meat of things, let's go ahead and play the disclaimer.
This presentation was produced under U.S. Department of Education contract number GS00F115CA with Synergy Enterprises, Inc. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, or enterprise mentioned herein is intended or should be inferred.
Awesome. Now that we've got disclaimed, I am very excited to welcome your program officer, Donna Sampis Burns. Hi, Donna.
Hey, Alani, thank you guys so much. And thank you, my NAL folks. It's always nice to be in touch with you all. Thank you to many of you who attended yesterday's session. We've received some really good feedback, and that's really, really exciting. And Christina, I just have to say, you're from Mount Pleasant, Michigan. My mother's maiden name, and she's 100% Tuscarora Mohawk from a Haudenosaunee tribe, and her last name is Mount Pleasant, spelled exactly the same way. And so when I see that, I just think, oh, that's so cool. But yes, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We are ready to give you a fun-filled festival of APR knowledge. And it's always such a great opportunity to ask your questions, to get through, even though you only do this once a year. And like us with processing our grants once a year, I always often find myself going back and looking at the steps. And so maybe we have some little tweaks or maybe some procedural changes, but we have it all laid out for you. And as it is being recorded for you to go back and take a look at it when you are actually writing. One comment I just wanted to say before I turn it back over to Alani is that the application package should be published by COB tomorrow. So if you happen to be so excited after this training session, you're going to go in. It's not published yet, but that's on me. I have to get and do that. And we'll try to do it today, but it might be tomorrow. So I just wanted to give that caveat. But thank you so much for joining. And let's get into it.
Okay. Thanks, Donna. And thanks for that update on the package being available and when that becomes available. So thank you. Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to be all about APR, from the cover sheet, an executive summary, to the part A, part B, part C, our optional tools, and we're going to remind you many times about when things are due. And so let's go. Let's start with a very important slide. This one is all about when your APR is actually due. It is due on April 26th, and notice that time change. In previous years, there was a different time, so you really want to make sure you're noting this on your calendars, that it is 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. So if you're on a different time zone, please make sure you're adjusting that. Also, maybe actually make your due date maybe a couple days before, maybe a week before. That way it gives you time. If there's any technical glitches as you're inputting your information, you can always contact for help in order to make sure that you actually get it submitted on time. So remember, put that down, April 26, 2024, 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. And here's some additional dates we want to just make sure that you have going into this season. And so again, you have that due date for the APR. The end of your grant year is September 30th, 2024. And you will, if you report 999, or maybe you have data that you want to update or maybe was incorrect, you do have the opportunity to submit an APR update that will be due October 24th, 2024. Now, again, and you'll hear me say this over and over again throughout this training, that if you do report 999, you are required to submit an APR update come October 24th, 2024. And so what really is the purpose of the APR? The APR is a federal grant requirement, and it's primary document submitted annually that allows you to document your progress towards your project objectives. We use this to say, you know, really share what your substantial progress is being made, and it's a way to communicate to your project officer, or your program officer, sorry, what all the amazing things that are going on in your program, and also maybe some of the challenges. This should probably not be the first time that you're communicating with your program officer, but it's definitely a very important time that can provide a lot of context and a lot of information to your program officer in order for them to determine whether or not you are making substantial progress in your program. So there's going to be a bunch of forms and tools that we're going to share in the chat. The first one is your APR checklist. This is a tool that you can use to make sure that all of the different pieces of your APR are included. It's a great tool. You can go through it and check it off, make sure you have everything. It provides the correct dates for when for the reporting period. It provides some really helpful information so that you can make sure that all the pieces of your APR puzzle are together and you're ready to submit. It's a good way if you are doing this APR with multiple people. Maybe you have a budget person, maybe you have another program coordinator or some other, you are working with a team. It's a great tool to use to bring everybody together before you actually start the APR, and maybe delegate some pieces of work and be clear about who's going to turn in at what time, the information, so that you can, as the program officer, program or project, I'm getting all confused. You're, as the project director, that you're able to submit everything on time and you have all the pieces you need. So where are you submitting this report? So you are submitting this report into the G6, formerly known as G5 system. We want you to make sure that you are aware of scheduling this and checking this system regularly to make sure that you are aware of any maintenance or updates that would be going on that may hinder your ability to submit your APR on time. You also want, again, like I said before, when we were talking about the due date, make sure you're checking your time zones. And if you have any questions regarding the system, G6, right there, I highlighted in red sort of the hours of operation and the help desk. If there's any technical questions, you need to contact the G6 to make sure that you are addressing those questions with them. While we try to understand the G6 system and the G5 system, we can't help with being able to any kind of technical glitches. So again, you want to make sure that you're giving yourself enough time, that if there are any technical glitches, you can get them addressed by the G6. So again, you can see those hours of the G6 operations of hours, sorry, from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Again, there's that time zone at Eastern time. So a lot of us that are away, maybe, west, you need to make sure that you're adjusting your time so you can get on that phone or get in the chat with the G6. And also we'll be putting in, I'll put this right here, a link to the system.
Hey, Alani, just real quick, just to let everybody know, and hopefully this will put your mind at ease. G6 this is pretty much all that's been done with G6 is the logon page. When you hit that sign in button, it's going to take you back essentially to G5. So there's nothing new right now as we continue to wait forever. But the platform, the landing page is different, but once you get in, everything just remains the same. I just wanted to ease people's minds just in
Yeah.
case.
Thanks, Donna. Yeah. So yeah, once you get in, it'll feel, if we've done a G5 before, it'll feel right, like you'll feel right at home. It looks the same. There are some changes. One is, again, we're switching from calling it G5 to G6. Again, like Donna said, this is still in transition. Basically, the thing that's changed is the login page. Another thing that's different for those of you who did an APR last year, you had to do your cover sheet and executive summary as two different documents and then combined it into a PDF. This year, you'll be able to upload it separately as two different documents. So you won't have to create a combined PDF, which is good because some of our grantees, based on their level of Adobe that they had, sometimes struggled with being able to do that. Also, in the Section A form, this year, your GEPRA denominators, if they are the same for everyone, then those will be automatically put into your Section A. And so you won't have to worry about that. Again, that's only for the GEPRA denominators that are shared and the same across the board. The other thing is that GEPRA measures will be pre-populated in your Section A form, and that's the language of the GEPRA measure. And so sometimes some grantees would change up the GEPRA measures. This year, it's already automatically going to be there for you, so you don't have to worry about getting the language correct. It'll already be there. So that's some lovely shortcuts and some lovely additions to you being able to complete your APR. And so here's some tips we'd like to sort of share with you to provide a stress-free and on-time submission. One of the things you'd want to do, and like Donna said, she's going to get in there and open up the package. But once that's done, I would really encourage you to go in and begin and complete your cover sheet and download it in order for you to get your authorized representative signature on it. It's sometimes because, you have very busy authorized representative. Sometimes there's the chair of your board or the executive director of your organization or the principal of your school. Sometimes getting them to sit down and review it and sign it can be a barrier to being able to submit it stress-free and on time. So you might want to get that out of the way right as soon as the package opens. The other one is, again, like I said, use your APR checklist to make sure that you have all the information and all the pieces of the APR that you need. And then the third part is for all narrative sections. Really, you want to create a separate document, a separate Word document or a separate Google document to use to do your narrative and do your writing, and then copy and paste it into G6 because sometimes the G6 system will automatically close out and then you may lose your narrative. And so again, do that separately, put it through Grammarly, do your spell check, and then once you feel confident about it, you can move it over. The other thing is you do have your project planners. And so there is a section in your project planner where you can go ahead and write your narrative sections, and you can use that and then copy and paste that over into the actual APR. Using your project planner and putting that information in there can be really helpful, particularly sometimes we see when there's turnover in organizations, maybe you're leaving and being promoted, and you're bringing in another project director. It's a really good record of what took place and what was submitted prior to in years, in earlier years. And so again, it's a great tool for you to use. So let's start to get into your actual reporting forms. And so the ED 524B is the official APR form used for discretionary grants. And we're going to go ahead and put a link in the chat. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Doris. That's where you can access all the information. We will be providing the forms in in this in the chat here. And you also have a Padlet that has the updated forms that you can access the forms as well. You want to make sure that you're checking that little, where'd it go? Sorry. There it is, making sure you have the right and the most updated form. It should read expiration date of 07/31/2024. So you want to make sure you have the correct form. And this form includes 5 distinct sections. The first one is the cover sheet, the executive summary, section A, section B, and section C. And we're going to walk through each part of these, each of these forms. Let's begin with the APR cover sheet. So first off, you want to make sure that you are using the correct PR number. Now, some of you have maybe several grants with OIE, so you want to make sure you're checking your NAL at ED PR number and putting it right there in item number 1. And then in item number 7, you want to make sure again that you're putting the correct reporting period. And I have it right there. It's 10/1/23 to 3/31/24. Okay. And so again, I know that you might be saying, oh, Lenny, but that's not the end of the year and we're having to do an annual report. You really are giving us a snapshot of what's been going on since the beginning of this grant year to March. And then again, like I said earlier, we do have the APR update, and then you'll be filling your program officer in with what's been happening with your grant for the remaining of the year via that update. All right, for section A, this area is really about the budget periods and what you'll be reporting on. And we're going to dive into that a little bit more in the next slide. Move this around. Okay. So right here on when you see this 8A, and let me move to the next slide so I can really hone in on this. And the reason why I'm just kind of diving a little deeper in is that many times we see that grantees struggle or they ask questions about this. So I just wanted to provide a little bit more clarity on this. And so you see here on 8A, if you are a grantee from fiscal year 2022, what you will be reporting here is the total amount of expenditures from last grant year, okay? If you are a new grantee coming in 2023, then this should be blank, okay? Again, if you are fiscal year 2022, we should see the total expenditures from your first grant year. If you are a fiscal year 2023, because this is your first year, you don't have anything to report here, so you'll be leaving this blank. For both grant years, both fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023, in this row B, you should both be reporting your total amount of expenditures, okay, for between the dates of 10/1/2023 and 3/31/2024. Okay, so everyone should have a number here. And then when we look at 8C, everyone should be leaving this blank. There shouldn't be any number here. Okay, I hope that clears it up a little bit. If there's any questions or that was not clear, you can go ahead and put that in the chat and I will try to use my words better and make it clearer. Okay. So then we're looking at item number 9. Be sure that you're entering the most up-to-date indirect cost information. Sometimes your indirect rates expire, and so you want to make sure that you have the renewed date there and providing all the renewed information. And make sure you're including, again, like I said, the most up-to-date information. Please do not skip this section. Make sure that you are completing it, have the right dates in here, and that the dates are up to date. Sometimes sometimes grantees put in expired dates, and then what that does is it slows down on the review of your APR, and you'll get a call and asking for your most updated due dates and your indirect cost information. So you want to make sure you're inputting the most up-to-date information. Then when we look at item number 10, it asks about human subject and IRB. You should be checking NA there. And then item number 11 is the last piece on this first page, but it's very important as it's about data privacy. Everyone should be checking yes in this for this item number 11, as well as including the corresponding policy. So many APRs are received and they correctly check yes here, but do not submit the corresponding policy. Make sure you are adding that. You can include that in your, as an attachment in your section C, and we'll get to that a little later. Then on the second page of your APR cover sheet, you have this item number 12. Okay, and so for item number 12, in 12A, you are going to be I'm sorry. You should, let me back up. This corresponds to the information that you are providing in your section A. And so if anywhere in your section A, you do not have complete data, because maybe it's not available yet, then you want to make sure you are clicking no. When you click no, then you're stating that the data is not all currently available, but you will have the data in a not too distant future, which may be by the end of your of the grant year. If you click yes, that means that all of your data is complete. You have no 999s. You have everything in, and you have everything filled out in your APR in section A, and then you will be marking yes. Again, no is usually indicates to us that you have maybe 999 information in your section A, which means that you don't have complete data. All right. Let's move on. And we're just going to have a short quiz time. And I'll turn that over to Sarah.
And did I miss? I think there was one more slide, your authorized signature.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I missed that one. Did that happen? So you want to make sure, this is the part where you get your authorized representative to sign. And this was, I had mentioned earlier, to reduce your stress, you want to complete this cover sheet and then submit it to your authorized representative and make sure that they have signed it. Now, you may be a new project director and may not be aware who your authorized representative is. You can always contact us at oie@seiservices.com and we can help you find that information out. If not, you can go to your executive director or your tribal council and see who is the authorized representative. Once they have signed it and submitted it, you want to hold on to that so that you can go ahead and upload it into the G6 section. Okay, now it's quiz time.
All right. So in order to help make sure that all of this is clicking for everybody, we have a couple of quizzes built in today. You'll just be taking them right on your screen. It'll be a magical poll that will pop up. So the first one is, for GEPRA number 3, you plan to use a district-wide attendance report that's available in October 2024. So what would you report on number 12 on the cover sheet? And number 12 is the one asking, do you have complete data at this time? So I'm going to launch that poll. And if you will fast finger in your response, and I do see a question in the box as far as if you changed your authorized rep for one grant, say an NYCP grant, would you need to make the change? Yes, if you want the authorized rep to be different, you would have to let each program officer know for each grant.
Yeah, Cindy, thank you. It also produces a new GAN. Oftentimes, I don't actually, that's a PD, but we have to initiate the action like that. And so, yeah, it's up to you. Just send it to the change to me in an email.
All right, that gave time for most everybody to fast finger it. I've still got a few of you mulling it over. But we're going to go ahead and check it out. Should you indicate yes or no? We're split. So I'll tell you the correct answer is actually you're going to report no, that you do not have your data because you don't have your data yet. Currently, you're reporting in April. It doesn't come available to October, so you do not have the data yet. So you're going to report no on number 12. All right, let's go to our next quiz. So in this one, you are a 2023 grantee. And I know some of you are 2023 grantees. For those of you who are 2022 grantees, remember back to last year when you were in your first year. You look in G6, you see that you have drawn down a total of $86,000 as of March 31st. What are you going to fill into box 8? So I'm going to launch this one. You'll see there's two questions. What are you going to put in 8A? And what are you going to put in 8B? So again, fast finger it in. You can harken back to game show world with me. No whammies. It's just a learning game. Looks like we're more sure on one of them than the other. People still kind of mulling over number 1.
Mhm.
All right, lock in those answers. Got about 5 seconds and I'm going to end the poll. Okay. So let's see what everybody thought. We're a little bit torn on number 1. We feel very confident in number 2. So on number 1, your previous budget period. Well, you're a new grantee. You don't have a previous budget period. So you're actually going to leave that blank. Just leave it blank. And then for number 2, we do want to know exactly how much you've drawn down during this reporting period. So absolutely, you are all correct. It's going to be $86,000.
Yay.
So very good. And that takes us to a few top tips. Also sprinkled throughout our day today are going to be a few helpful hints that we have learned over the years for a successful reporting season. First, as soon as this APR webinar is over, I want you to go to your email and send an email to your budget office and tell them, I need my G5, G6, whichever you're calling it around your office, same system, drawdown report, and ask them to send it on April 1st. Okay, because that's going to make it really nice and easy for you to complete all your budget pieces. And the sooner you get that, the sooner you can move on. Number 2, go ahead and complete that cover sheet. Once you have that drawdown report, you've got basically all the info you need to complete that cover sheet. So fill it out, download it out of G5, and get it over to that authorized rep for signature, because that is the most common reason grantees give for completing their APR late. And it's not a great reason to turn it in late. Okay, you don't have to wait until your full report is complete to get that signature. You know you're going to need it, ask for it in advance, because often those folks who are authorized reps are people whose desks get a little busy. And then finally, go ahead and check that your indirect cost rate has not expired. Sometimes we just don't remember. So make sure and look back at that paperwork and see the effective dates. Some of you, it may have expired the end of December. Some of you, it may be expiring the end of July. Just check and see when your indirect cost rate is going to expire. And those are your cover sheet top tips.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Are there any questions? I did see a question in the chat and Casey responded. So yeah, we are recording this. The PDF slides will be available on your Padlet. And I know Doris shared a link to the NAL Padlet. So once this is complete, we'll upload it there. And then you'll also have the recording on YouTube in a couple of days. Are there any other questions? Awesome. All right. Let's move on to the executive summary. And so this next section of your APR is your executive summary. You will be writing about 1 to 2 pages to provide a narrative description of your program's accomplishments and highlights. This is an opportunity to really think about your project's goals and intended outcomes and describe the extent to which your program was able to accomplish those things or not. And provide rationale as to why it was, explain the challenges that you faced throughout this year. Also, it's a great place to include maybe lessons that you've learned and insights that you gained along the way. A lot of NAL grantees, they start off with like the GEPRA, and those are really some really exciting measures, and you create these measurement tools, and maybe we see a lot of times where the measurement tools need to be adjusted. This would be a great place to share that information, the adjustments that you've made. You also may want to cover how you are like dealing with some of these challenges and the different sort of strategies that you put in place in order to overcome these challenges. If your project goals and objectives were not actually met, this is a great place to provide information about that and just really share what's going on. Lastly, in your executive summary, OIE really wants to know about what contributions your project has made to maybe some research, knowledge, practice, and/or policy. A lot of you NAL at ED grantees are doing some really innovative work around language. And so, and you're engaging your community and your schools and even your tribes in order to create new information, new policies and practices. This is a great place to really share the impact that your program is making as it relates to, the larger landscape around language. And here's just an added tip. You want to make sure that you do not copy and paste the narrative from section A or take the executive summary and use it for section A. This should be really an overview for your executive summary, and it should be different from what you're putting into your section A. We should really kind of get a bird's eye view of your program and be sharing information that we won't find anyplace else in your APR report. And we're straight into another quiz time. Go ahead, Sarah.
You're warmed up, so I know these you'll get. How many pages should your executive summary include? This is a quick one. You're not going to have much time on this one. Should be about a half a page, but no more than a page. 1 to 2 pages, no more than 3. I feel like people know this one.
Yeah, looks like it.
The first group's in quick. All right, let's see.
Yeah.
And you all got it correct. 1 to 2 pages maximum. Now, remember, if you need more, if you're like, I definitely have one more page worth of stuff I need to say, take that on over to section C. You don't have to get rid of it. You just can't put it here. All right, question 4. You missed one of your targets for a project measure. Which of the following actions should you take in your executive summary? Let me launch that one. So should you write 999 because you need more data? Should you share the challenges you had in meeting that particular measure, but not go into detail because you can do that later? Or should you discuss the project measure, your progress you made toward it, and a brief rationale for why you missed it? We have options. Which could it be? All right.
Mm.
We're going to go ahead and close. All right, so it is actually B. We want you to share the challenges you had in meeting that project measure, but you don't need to go into too much detail because remember, you're going to put that really specific info over in section A in your explanation of progress. So you're keeping it broad here and then getting into the detail over in your explanation of progress in section A. All right, and that takes us to your executive summary top tips. Stick to that 2-page limit. You can always put more in section C. So really keep it to the limit here, extra info there. Don't just repeat the info from section A. Okay. So the big thing here is everybody who reads your APR, your program officer, the TA team, we're going to read the whole thing. So if it says the exact same thing in the executive summary as in section A, it doesn't really help us learn more about your program. We want new info. So think of your whole report as one big document. You don't want to be repetitive. You want to keep us going throughout. And then finally, this is my biggest tip is when you're writing your executive summary, think about if you were going to just sit down with Donna over a coffee and tell her how the last 6 months have gone. Think of it as that. Catch your program officer up on the good and the not so good. She wants to know about it all. So just envision yourself having a sit chat with Donna over a coffee right there, and then write out that executive summary. And then on to section A.
Awesome.
Oh, I see a question though.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, two. One, do not worry if you're getting incorrect answers. First of all, no one knows it's you. And two, that's the whole point. Because for many of you, this is your very first APR. And even those of us who have done APRs multiple times, there's always so much more to learn. So do not worry with that whatsoever. And then as far as why C was not the good choice, only because that's actually what we want you to do in your explanation of progress, is go into that more detailed explanation there and then do the little bit more broad in the executive summary. So it's not that it was a bad choice. It's just more what we'd like to see in your explanation of progress. Good questions.
Yeah, great questions. Anything else? Any other questions? If not, we will keep it moving. All right, we're into section A here. This is really where you're going to be sharing a lot about what's going on with your actual measures. There will be some numbers that you'll be providing as well as some narrative. And so let's go here. This is really where the bulk of the information regarding where the progress of your project will be articulated. So let's break this chart down. First, you have to select your performance measure. Again, it says exact wording here. Now, if it's a GEPRA, that will automatically be put into that section. If it is your project measure, you want to make sure that if you are a fiscal year 2022 grantee, that you are using the exact same language of your project measures from your first APR, that's moving over into this new second year APR. For those new grantees, if you remember after our grant leadership academy, we got together and we worked on fine-tuning your project objectives in the planner. And so you want to utilize that language in this section here under performance measure. You can just copy and paste it from your planner under project measures and put that right here. You want to go ahead and in the where the circle is be able to select the measure type. So if it's a GEPRA, you're going to select GEPRA. If it's your own project measures, then you're going to go ahead and select project measure. There we go. There we go. Then the next thing you're going to want to do is look at target and ratio. This is really your key information. Again, if it is a GEPRA, this will be blank. Anything under target, it will only show up under actual performance data. Okay, if it's your project measure, then you are going to put in a number here. Again, that should be based on the actual SMART project objective that you created. And for our fiscal year 2022 grantees, you'll be again moving a lot of that language over from your first year. Right here is where you're going to be reporting what you've actually completed. And so in this section, you're going to want to put in your data that you have on hand for this reporting period. And so this will be a ratio again, and it depends on your measure and what that ratio will be. We'll get into that a little bit more in upcoming slides. Okay, so that's the different parts of that chart. So let's talk about the difference between the GEPRA and the project measure. So again, you have your GEPRA measures. These are defined by ED, and we'll get into those. That language will be automatically completed and should be there in this project measure. Then you are going to select GEPRA because it is a GEPRA measure. Again, like I said earlier, in your target areas, you will not be reporting anything, so that should be just left blank. Sometimes G5 kind of or G6 kind of glitches and it requires you to put something in there. You could go ahead and put a 0, and that way we'll know, or a 1/1. That way we'll know that you're not intending to put anything, but the system is requiring you to put something there. Where you will be reporting a number is in this ratio box right here. And we'll get into a little bit more detail about what you'll be reporting as it relates to the GEPRA measure. Then when you look at the project measure, again, you are taking the language that was either for fiscal year 2022 reported in last year's APR, that exact same language moves over to this year's project measure. For the new grantees, fiscal year 23, you will be taking those project measures from your program planner, your project planner that were approved by Donna. You will be selecting, the measure type will be project. You will provide your target information here, and then you will be providing the actual, like the data that you have. Alrighty, so these are just a review, your GEPRA measures. So every grantee who is a part of the NAL at ED program will be required to report on these 4 measures. Let's get into the different measures. And these are, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm partial, but I think that these are some amazing measures and are very helpful for those of you who are administering and creating language programs. And they're great because while they provide some guardrails, they also allow for a lot of flexibility as it relates to your language program. And so the first GEPRA is the number and percentage of participating students who attain proficiency in the native language as determined by each grantee through pre- and post-assessments of native language proficiency. And so the great thing is, again, it's providing some guardrails, but you are are allowed to define what proficiency means to you. And that should be measured. It provides some guardrails, again, based on a pre and a post assessment. Now, what those assessments are, again, you get to determine what they are. And so when you are reporting this GEPRA measure, what you're reporting on the top, the numerator, is the number of students who are able to reach proficiency based on your definition in the native language. That bottom number is should reflect the total number of students served. So for example, if you are serving, maybe you have 250 students in your language immersion school, let's say, for example, and maybe 150 have reached proficiency based on how you are defining it, then it would be 150 over 250, just as an example. So for GEPR measure number 2, again, this is language around language progress. The number and percentage of participating students who make progress in learning a native language as determined by each grantee through pre and post assessments of native language proficiency. Again, you are able to decide what you are defining as progress. The guardrails are there should be a pre and a post assessment, but what that assessment looks like, how it's delivered is up to you, okay? So again, for this GEPR measure, you want to be reporting the number of students that made progress based on your definition in learning the native language. And that bottom number, like the first GEPR, should be the total number of students served. Again, I'm partial, but I think those are two great measures for native language programs, because again, it provides guardrails, but it allows for some amazing flexibility. The GEPR measure number 3, the number of students that show academic improvement. Now, for fiscal year 2022, you may have already selected what that and define what that academic improvement is. You want to go ahead and use that same definition, or maybe if it's changed, make sure in your explanation of progress, you are articulating that. For our new fiscal year 2023 grantees, this is an opportunity for you to define and select what academic improvement means. Many of our grantees, NAL grantees, look at academic improvement in maybe English language arts or in another language. They maybe look at grades. You get to determine how you're defining academic improvement, but you also have to articulate that definition so that OIE understands that. And then the bottom number is the total number of students served. Okay. And then the fourth GEPRA. And this one kind of maybe it can be a little bit challenging, and we see some NAL-ED, particularly new grantees, get a little stumped over this. But this GEPRA is really focused around the difference in the average daily attendance between participant groups and comparison groups. Now, both GEPR number 3 and GEPR number 4 are really based around the premise that if students are engaged in their native language, they are finding that the education is more relevant. And so the assumption is, and it's an educated assumption, is that grades go up and also attendance goes up. And really one of the first indicators you see is really attendance going up, which then of course affects academic achievement. And so what you'll be doing is, for this measure, is you're going to need to identify a comparison group. So for example, if you have maybe pull-out classes for your language program, but the remaining students in the school do not experience the language program, they could be your comparison group. And so your comparison group is really another group of students who are similar to your language students, but are not receiving Native American language content or instruction. And so if you are, let's say, in immersion school, and so your entire school is receiving native language instruction, then there is no comparison group within there. So you might, let's say you're a K-5 school, you're an immersion school, you might have to identify another similar K-5 school in your area that has similar demographics as your comparison group. And so sometimes it requires you to look outside of your school. Now that can create some challenges as it relates to collecting that data. And so you may have to enter into an agreement about data sharing, or you may have to wait until all of like the state's or the district attendance data is collected and submitted into some sort of like annual report. And so that may affect your timing as far as when you're able to submit this data. Now, again, it could be within a school, within your own school. You may have some students who are getting language instruction and some who aren't, who are of the same grade level and are like demographics of your native language students. And so that could be an easier way to sort of get that information. Now, if you see on the bottom, you see that denominator is 100. That denominator is a common denominator that will run across all all NAL grantees. And so that one will automatically be put in to your section A in the APR, okay? So everyone should have 100 for this measure as the denominator. Let's take a look. So when you are reporting this, it does require a little bit of math. Okay, so we take your participant group. Your participant group is showing 98% of average daily attendance. Your comparison group is showing 96% of average day attendance. So by just looking at that number, you can see that 98%, your participant group is showing better attendance. But what is the math you need to do in order to report for that GEPRA measure? So basically, there's a difference of 2 points, right? So you just minus, subtract, and you can see the difference of 2. And so that's what you would report. And I'll show it right here. And that's what it should look like. Okay, so it would be 2 over 100. Okay, yeah. All right, great. Yeah, I was just looking at your question, Cindy. Okay, great, awesome. Now let's look at another scenario as it relates to GEPRA measure number 4. And that was a great question, Cindy. So let's say the participant group, so those students who are receiving language instruction, their average daily attendance is at 89%. But the comparison group has a higher percentage, or 93% of average daily attendance. So what does that math look like in order for you to provide that report? So basically, again, you're subtracting, and what you have is a -4 difference, right? And so there are 4 points, -4 points between the participant and the comparison group. And so what does that look like when you are going ahead and reporting that? So because it's a negative, what you will be reporting in the numerator is a 0. So if you have a -2, a -1, a negative a gazillion, you are reporting 0 as the numerator. Does that make sense? Yeah. Sarah's saying that G5 can't handle a negative number, and so that 0 will indicate to your program officer that there was a difference. The other thing too, I really want to encourage you, and we'll get into this a little later, is you can actually articulate those percentages in your explanation of progress. So while the G5 won't be able to accommodate the negative number in those charts, you can put that into the narrative. Okay, again, so for the NAL GEPRA measures, we should not see anything in the targeted data section. So that should just be all blank. What we should see reported right here is the actual GEPRA measure, which will automatically be put in this year for you. You will select GEPRA measure for the type of measure. And then you will definitely be providing your data here in the performance data. Now, let's say that you won't have this data. You did your pre-test at the beginning of the year, you're providing language instruction, but you won't have your post-test done until the end of the school year, which is beyond this reporting period. If that's the case, then what we should see here in the numerator is 999. 999 means that I'm going to get the data. I don't have the data right now. And that will also be a sort of yellow flag to let you know that you will be needing to submit an APR update. The other real critical piece to include here is your explanation of progress. All right, this is a place where you get to explain what proficiency means. you get to explain the methods in which what does your pre and post assessments look like? When are they delivered? This is really where you get to tell us the nitty-gritty of this actual measure. Oh, okay. So for GEPRA measure number 2, again, that'll automatically be put there. You want to go ahead and select your GEPRA measure type. And then again, you will only be providing data in the actual performance data ratio section. And then again, utilizing the explanation of progress to really give us information regarding how you are defining progress and what that pre and post assessments look like. Again, getting into the nitty gritty of what what this is all about, and maybe letting us know, hey, we did the pre-assessment, this is what we saw, maybe 70% of our students are at beginner level proficiency, and we anticipate that mid-year we will be doing a mid-year assessment. We anticipate that we will see them at this level, and then we will be conducting a post-assessment at the end of this school year, and we'll have the data, for the APR updates. Talk a little bit about the instruction methods and even about the assessment. Maybe you're using where you're sitting down with a person and they're speaking and you're collecting that type of data there. Maybe it's electronic and you're using a system, a computer system to collect the data. Just really share the details of that information in that executive explanation of progress. Then again, when we have GEPR number 3, you're going to again be reporting that information into this ratio. And again, providing explanation of progress. Here, you want to provide information about what academic outcomes you're measuring, and how you are collecting that information. What does improvement mean? All of that, really looking at the measures, the GEPR measures, and dissecting different words and defining different words as it relates to your program. So for example, improvement, is that percentage? How are you defining that? Really giving your program officer a sense and a real clear definition of this GEPR measure and what that means to you. And then again, for GEPR measure number 4, again, you see that bottom denominator is at 100. You are going to do your calculations and be able to report on the numerator. Now, if you don't have this information yet, because again, maybe you have to wait for like the district data to be collected, and that may come later, you will be reporting either a 999, or if you won't have that data until maybe, November of the next grant year, then you can report 0 there. Again, you want to take the opportunity to really get into the explanation of progress, talk about that comparison group, how you identified them, share, maybe you have to do a data sharing agreement with a partner school, or within your school, and how you're identifying that comparison group. So if you don't have complete data yet, but you anticipate having it by the end of the grant year, what you will be reporting again is 999, okay? Now this goes across GEPR measures as well as project measures. So here's a screenshot of what a project status chart may look like when measures are entered. And so again, we're looking at this is your project measure, which you are either grabbing from last year's APR report or from your project planners. You will include information in the ratio target data section, as well as providing your data in the actual performance ratio column. This measure again comes from either last year's APR or your project planner. You are indicating the proper appropriate measure type, which would be project. And you are including your data in that ratio. And of course, your explanation of progress. You just really want to take some time to explain this measure, talk about how you are collecting that information and how frequently you are collecting that information. So again, with a project status chart, you really want to be mindful of the current reporting period that you're reporting on. So all of the data included in this should be collected between 10/1/23 and 3/31/24, okay? Anything before 10/1/23 should have been included in your last year's APR update. Anything after 3/31 will be included in this year's APR updates. The data that are not available or unavailable right now, but you will have available by the end of this grant year, you should be reporting 999. Okay, if the data will not exist and will not be available until after September 30th, 2024, then you want to go ahead and report 0/1 for your project measures, or it might be even your GEPRA. And so one of the ones we see that normally doesn't get reported on in the actual year is that attendance, because sometimes people have to wait until, like I said, the district sort of compilates all of the data, and then you can get your hands on that attendance data. And so that might be reflected in next year's APR. So you would report 0/1 in this year. That's the case we've seen the most of. So what should be included in your explanation of progress? And I've gone through that a little bit, but we're going to dig into this a little bit more. So you really want to demonstrate how you have met or made progress towards your measure, provide a detailed explanation of why or why not, describe any steps and schedule for addressing a problem or issue. And so if you have a challenge, it's really great to take some time to talk about, we've identified this challenge, and now we're putting these pieces or these strategies into place to address the challenge. One thing we see, often, particularly in GEPRA, and the GEPRA measures are challenges around getting that data for either measures GEPRA 3 or 4, because that actually has to come from maybe someplace else. And so really talk about, if you're having some challenges, what you're doing to sort of work through those challenges so that you are able to report on those two GEPRA measures. Also, what data are collected and when they are collected. Really take some time to explain your evaluation methods, maybe who's involved in your evaluation team, also how that data that you're collecting gets used to maybe inform strategies and decisions that you're doing related to your activities and any accomplishments. And if data is not available, you want to, like I said, share that with your project program officer. So your explanation of progress, what does it do? It provides details about the reported quantitative data. So it should be an explanation and talking about the actual quantitative data you're providing in Section A. You want to make sure that it's clearly linked to each listed measure. And so sometimes we have grantees that have like maybe GEPRA 2 and GEPRA 1 and GEPRA 2 in the charts above. Please, in the explanation of progress, identify GEPRA 1 and then provide that explanation of progress for GEPRA 1, and then identify GEPRA 2 and then provide the explanation of progress for GEPRA 2. That just really makes it a lot easier to read and bring along your program officer in the process. You also want to make sure that you're explaining how the data is collected and compiled for reporting. So again, maybe you have a system, an online system, or maybe what you're doing is you have proctors that are doing the assessments, you collect those assessments, and then you upload into a system. Really share with us, as if we were there, how you are collecting the data and how it's compiled. Maybe you create like graph reports, then now the team looks at that, and then now you're able to do the report. Just provide all that detail into that process. Okay, that was section A. It is now quiz time.
All right, I know it was a lot of info.
Yeah.
So we're gonna just see how it's percolating in our minds. On this first one, we have your GEPRA measure. Okay, so we're looking at GEPRA measure 1, and we're gonna figure out what all should I be reporting on? Where all should I actually have numbers here? So I'm gonna launch this one, and you'll see your options. Should you have both a target raw number and ratio, or a target ratio and an actual ratio, or a target raw number and an actual raw number, or just an actual performance ratio?
Yay.
Remember, it's just a learning game.
Yeah.
Let's see what everybody's thinking. Where are we going to actually put numbers? About 5 more seconds. Just lock in that answer. And all right, let's see what people thought. We seem torn between two. Most of us saying actual performance ratio, a little bit on the target. So yeah, for a GEPRA measure, you only need data in one spot, which is your actual ratio. These are the ones that are the easiest to report on as far as you only need one number filled in. All right. The next one. So for this one, it's a project measure. So this is one of the measures that's unique to you. And we said that 75% of teachers would increase their proficiency in culturally responsive strategies by at least one level in 3 of 4 categories as measured by an observation rubric. We do our observations throughout the year, but we wrap them up by the end of March. 20 of the 30 teachers actually accomplished this goal. So what is that going to look like when I fill in my section A? So you'll see this one's set up a little bit different. So you're actually going to match the answers. So match what would go in the target raw number, what would go in the target ratio, actual ratio, and actual raw number. So I'll give you a little bit more time on this one to match these up. Alani showed you the answer, so keep watching. You know, it was a test to see who's paying attention.
Yeah. Just a little cheating here.
Yeah. How quick are your eyes?
Yeah. Like Casey said, hint, hint.
Yeah. It was up quickly. All right, I see people are starting to lock in those answers. Okay, so I'll give you a little more time on that. This one's a little more complex.
Yeah.
Four different blanks we have to fill in.
No, it's a whole thing.
It's not as tricky when it's your actual data in G5
Yeah.
because you know the answers.
Yeah.
All right. I want to at least let a couple more of you get locked in here. I will also let you know it's the last quiz question of section A.
Yeah.
So there will be no more tricks up our sleeves in this section. No guarantees. All right, let's go ahead and take a look. So a lot of folks really kind of agreeing on a lot of them.
Yeah.
So you can see target raw number, that should be blank. You don't even need anything there because we don't do raw numbers. Target ratio, you do need to fill in because this is one of your measures you set a goal around. And you said that 75% of these folks were going to do it. So your goal is 75 out of 100. Your actual because you have data is that 67% did it. So 67 out of 100. And then actual raw number, we don't need because we don't use raw numbers. Now, the reason you see two options here is because either of these would be totally fine. So if you reported that 20 out of 30 of your teachers completed that, that's still fine because that still is going to result in a percentage that we can compare. So the top one is more typically how we would see people report it, but either one would be totally okay.
Mhm.
All right. Oh,
Oh, how did they do that? Sorry.
I think you might have double clicked if you go back one. Well, we'll just review that one because it's very clear what the answer is. So I'm not going to make you pull this one out. But we want to talk about what is not a good tip for writing your explanation of progress. So the good tips are to tell the story behind your quantitative data. Okay. We want you to put the details. We want you to go into the story. We want you to use section C if it doesn't fit in that box. Admittedly, the explanation of progress box is not all that large. And if you try to put in, say, like this really cool chart you have, it doesn't know what to do with it. But you could pop all of that into section C. And then you just type see section C for more info. And then we want you to include an explanation of progress for all the measures, even if you have no data currently. Because even if you're saying, I don't have any data for the attendance one because it's not the end of the school year, attendance hasn't completed for the year.
Mhm.
That's totally normal, but we want you to talk about how are you measuring that? Who are you using as a comparison group? All of that other information about that, even though you don't have quantitative data just yet.
Mhm.
So the not good tip, the one we don't want you to do, is to keep your response brief and to the point. We do want you to be to the point, but this is not the time when we want you to just put one sentence and move on. I
Mhm.
guarantee you, if your explanation of progress is only 1 or 2 sentences, you probably have not included the full story. So make sure that you're telling us the full story for each one.
Mhm.
All right, let's go to our tips. Before you move on, make sure that you've included all 4 GEPRA, any project measures you have, and go back and check the slides to make sure that you're reporting the way in which OIE would like you to on those.
Mhm.
The second one is highly, highly, highly encourage you to write your explanation of progress outside of G5. Write it in a Word document, write it in the Ed 524 form or your planner. Write it somewhere else where you can do a spelling and grammar check because G5 doesn't have that.
Mhm.
The other thing it doesn't have is a save. So if you are just writing it out, and I mean, you've got gold here, you have spun the perfect story, and then it times out as it is wont to do, and you will be very sad because it's gone. It does not auto save anything. So when it times out, it eats all your hard work. Well, if you'd written it somewhere else, you could just go back and copy and paste it again. But if
Yeah.
you write in G5, it's off in the wind. And then finally, don't slack on the explanation of progress. As I was just saying on our quiz question, this really is your chance to tell the story behind your data. Don't miss that chance. Tell us the whole story. Make good use of all those opportunities to paint the full picture of your program. And then we get to head over to budget time.
Yeah. But before we get there, we're gonna just a little APR update info. So again, any data that you maybe have reported 999 on that you don't have right now, you will need to be submitting APR update come October 24th. And we'll have some webinars about how to do that and provide you the information as we get closer. That APR update is usually submitted via email or another system. It is not done within the G6 system. And this really allows you to provide that updated data. And again, like I said, we'll be providing more details as we get closer to that date regarding your APR update in a talking circle or office hours. Well, we won't let you forget that that's coming. Are there any questions? I'm just going to take a moment. Oh, I've got Cindy. You got that? Any questions? I know we've kind of like we're at the top of the hill. That was a whole bunch of information. We're at the top and we're on our way back down. We got some really crucial, additionally crucial information around your budget. Again, this is in section B. In this section, you will use section B to provide a narrative of your spending for the entire grant period. Again, that's up until March 31st, 2024. This section will expand as you write. Ideally, you want to organize this section and this narrative based on the different budget categories, and we'll look at an example of that. So what are you going to be reporting? Really, you're going to be reporting on the funds expended or obligated, even if it's not reflected yet in G6. And so maybe, with your budget office, you've got those funds obligated or expended. You'll be reporting on those funds as of 3/31/24. Anything in the future, you can talk about it. Maybe you after going through your budget, you want to make some changes. You can talk about that in this section and give your program officers a heads up. It's a great way, again, of continuing the conversation with your program officer. Additionally, in this section, you want to provide your G6 drawdown frequency. The optimal should be at a minimum quarterly where you are doing your drawdowns. If you are on a different schedule, please explain that. Explain any process that you have in place in order for you to track your expenditures and make sure that you're working with your budget office. I've heard of some grantees who monthly, when your financial office or your budget people reconcile the monthly expenses, is a great time where they come around, they look at the reconciliation, and then they talk about, project activities moving forward and expected expenditures in the next month. And that really, as being a project director, is really helpful for you because ultimately you're responsible for reporting all of that information. Also, in your budget information, you want to include, if the spending isn't going as planned. And so maybe, there was some hiring issues, maybe there's some changes that need to be made. You want to make sure that you are explaining any of those spending glitches. The first priority is to spend your funds as indicated in your application. If there are issues with any of your expenditures, again, this shouldn't be the first time that your program officer is hearing about this. Maybe you've actually submitted a budget revision, and so whatever and you've gotten that approved, maybe prior to 3/31/2024, you want to make sure that your budget information is reflecting that budget revision. At this point, you should be really have spent approximately maybe 50 or 60% of your current budget. And so your program officer will be looking at your expenditure sort of and where they're at. If you are like, maybe you only spent 20%, you want to make sure you're providing ample sort of explanation of why that is and any sort of maybe anticipated changes that you may be wanting to engage with your program officer on, like immediately after the APR. Budget revisions may be, again, submitted at any time throughout the grant year. If you, again, like I said earlier, if you have submitted a budget revision, it has gotten approved, prior to 3/31/2024, then the information you're providing in this APR should reflect that budget revision. If you anticipate after, maybe sitting with your APR and sitting with your budget team that you do need to do a budget revision, you can talk about that, but you will not be submitting a budget revision form as part of your APR. That's a separate process that you can do right after your APR is submitted. And so what would this section look like? Again, this is a really great way to help organize this, and it makes it easy for your program officer to review this. It helps to keep everything organized. Sometimes when I get to look at these, I like to sort of copy your budget worksheet and look at it as it relates to the narrative and sort of see the two side by side. And so this is organized based on the different budget categories: personnel, fringe, travel, supplies, and contractual. So there's some great explanations about what's going on with those funding, and really sort of just talking through the budget, the numbers that you're sharing in your worksheet. And this is a tool. Thanks, Doris, for sharing those section B. This is an optional budget reporting tool. It is not required, but it does provide all the information as well as all the calculations that you need. There are cells here that are locked that will automatically calculate. All the cells you see here in yellow that are highlighted yellow are areas where you can actually enter in your information. And then you can see it'll calculate in the other sections. There are two areas where you need to provide a narrative. That's the column rationale for available funds. And then the last column labeled intended use of the remaining funds. Again, this is not a requirement. However, if you are going to provide it in a different format, then all of the same information needs to be provided. Okay, so really sort of take a look. This is a great time to assess where you are financially and be able to sort of think through what's coming up in the future. If you have any questions regarding these fields, maybe you weren't able to have your fiscal person join this APR webinar, you definitely want to make sure that you maybe send them the recording, and we can always sort of sit down and have a coaching session with you and your fiscal person to walk through this. We often look at, you take a go at it, and then you can send it to us prior and schedule a coaching session, and then we can go over it. And then once we've kind of provided any of our recommendations, you can make those changes and then submit that as part of your APR report. But that does require you to kind of get started and get moving on this as soon as possible. So again, there are two justification columns in the tool. One is column F, where you'll be providing a narrative to describe why you have the amount remaining that's located in column E, and how you plan to expend those monies that are remaining for the current grant year. And you should all have funds remaining. Now, it'd be, a little, you want to provide more information in your section B. If, like, for example, your personnel, you're way underspending, you really want to take some time I'll go back in this section to really explain that. But you definitely want to include an abbreviated version in column F. Okay. Also in column I, you will be wanting to share information regarding the intended use of the remaining funds. And so you want to be able to provide detail on where you plan to use any potential carryover funds, maybe in the next grant year. The goal here really is, and it's kind of a great time to take stock of where you are financially and make the adjustments necessary in order to spend down all your money in the appropriate and the allocated grant year. I know it seems maybe like fabulous to be able to have like large sums of money in your second or your third grant year. But remember, if you're having challenges expending the funds that have been allocated to you in a particular grant year, having more can often create more headache than to have that fabulous, total number, large number in your total column. And so I really want to encourage you to take advantage of this time and really take stock of your financial positioning and to make the adjustments necessary in order to get the services that you need to your students and to use them in appropriate ways and to use them within the grant year. That's my budget stuff, our goodies. I'll turn it over to Sarah. I see.
Yep, because it's time for your quiz. I do see that Marla had a couple of questions,
Yeah.
so we can knock those out real fast. Kind of question 1 and 2 go together. So basically, you can move things, but everything requires a budget revision. So when you are taking money into the new year, and especially taking money into the new year and moving where it may sit, that's going to require a budget revision. But that's also part of why all grantees are required to do a budget revision at the start of each new grant year. So at the start of next year, you'll be asked to complete a budget revision, typically due mid-November. And in that, you'll describe any changes you need to make to any potential carryover. However, at this point in the year, we also really encourage you that if you see that you're not spending in a certain category, maybe you have a position that got hired later in the year, there's some cost savings there. Think about how you can use that within the scope of your project and go ahead and put in a budget revision now. You could do budget revisions all throughout the year, and we'd much rather you move that money and spend it on your program and your students than to just let it sit there because it happens to be in a spot that's not working for you.
Mhm.
And then I see when budget adjustments are still being made, am I just simply stating in the budget justification of the report, or I'll be waiting for your approval first before doing so? So when you're doing the budget in this report, the key part is report. We're just reporting that information. If you want to make changes, you need to complete the budget revision form, send that into Donna and get approval. Anything you talk about in your report is just informational. If you want to make changes and need approval on that, that's in a budget revision and you just email it into Donna and she'll get back to you. All right. Into our quiz we go. So I'm going to go ahead and launch it because I know some of you may have already seen it. And it's actually going to contain questions 8 and 9 together. So on question 8, that's a 3-parter. Do you plan to use the optional budget reporting tool? There's no right or wrong answer on this one. We're just curious. There are correct answers for the other 2 parts. If you, excuse me, if you do the budget narrative, do you still need the budget tool? And if you do the budget tool, do you still need the budget narrative? Clock in that answer, and we're going to look at question 9. Question 9, you see we've labeled each of the columns. As you look at all those columns, which ones must you enter data into? So these are columns that are not pre-filled and will not auto-calculate. What are the columns that you have to put info into? So we'll leave that one on the screen so you can see it. And the other ones you can review in the actual poll, and I know you'll be fine. Yeah, so this one has 4 questions. And on question 4, just know you can click all the applicable ones. That's how that one works. And if you think back, just a few slides ago, Alani may have reviewed those areas in which you complete some information. All right. About 5 more seconds and we're going to lock it down. And there we go. All right. Let's look. So it looks like everybody plans to use the reporting tool. I think that's the easiest way myself, so I agree with you. But that one, there's no right or wrong. For number 2, if you do the budget narrative, do you need the tool? The answer is yes. Okay. And same thing, if you do the tool, do you need the narrative? So the answers for 2 and 3 are both yes, because we're asking for different information in each of those. So in the narrative, you're giving kind of this detailed bit. You're going into how frequently you're communicating with your budget office and how frequently you're doing drawdowns, some of that other info. And then in the spreadsheet, you're giving the hard numbers. So that's why you do need actually both items. And then for 4, well, we had a lot of thoughts on 4. So I'll tell you the correct answer is B, C, D. Okay, so your approved budget, what you've drawn down, and what you've spent but haven't quite drawn down yet. So B, C, and D. Then F and G, which is your rationale, that narrative piece. And then G, the anticipated to be spent. And then finally I, which is intended use. So basically, it's the 6 columns that don't have anything in them right now. That's the easiest way, I think, to remember.
Yeah.
All right, but very good. All right, some quick top tips, because we're just a scotch over here. Make sure to submit both the narrative and the reporting tool, which it sounds like we've kind of got under control. Remember that if you choose not to use the reporting tool, you just need all that same info in another format. But it sounds like everybody's just going the easy route. I would too. And then 3, I think, is the most important. Let your budget office know what you need right now and for what reporting period. They may have other things going on and may not have the same sense of urgency with getting you that info as you have in completing this report. So the sooner you loop them in, the better. All right.
Awesome. And I see we got to Marla's questions. And we'll move on because again, we're like past time. I'm sorry about that. Just hold on for a smidgen. We're almost through here. So we're moving on to section C. This is where you get to include any information that maybe didn't fit in your executive summary, maybe didn't fit in your explanation of progress, and or maybe you just want to provide us with some additional information. What can go in this section? We really want to hear about your success stories, your challenges, provide any other appropriate information about the status of your project, including any unanticipated, goodness gracious, outcomes or benefits from your project. Also, this is a great place where a lot of NAL grantees maybe share their assessment tools they're using, any curriculum materials that they think are really innovative that they'd love to share. We also it's a great place to sort of get a peek into the classrooms. We get a lot of pictures in this section. You can also provide information that, again, like it won't fit in other places, executive summary or section A. Okay. You can also upload everything as one PDF. And so you really want to take that narrative, that section C, and any other attachments and combined it into one PDF so it can all be uploaded together. We also provide an optional section C reporting tool. So this is information that is not, that is really helpful to OIE, but is not provided in any other place in this APR. And so we really want to encourage you, but you're not required to use this form. If you're not going to use this form, we really want to, we still need to collect this data, but you can provide it in another format. And we'll put that form up. This form has, various sections, and we'll sort of briefly walk through this where you're putting your grantee name. You're also putting sort of the grade levels that are being served under this NAL grantee, or NAL grant, sorry. Also here, you are both reporting, like during this reporting period, any unique students or unique adults. So that is really students or adults that are not being, that are unduplicated in the count. And then you can also provide what your anticipated number is by the end of the grant year. This is some really great information to provide regarding your project director, how many staff are full-time on your project or part-time. And then talking about how you are or when you are delivering your services, whether it's before school, after school, or during holidays, weekends. And then select all applicable methods that you provide this. And so whether this is, you can select multiple for this, in person, virtual, or hybrid. And so you can see that this is not really information that might be provided in other sections. Also, it's really helpful for OIE when they look across their language programs to see the different types of language instruction that's being provided. So you can go ahead and check those that apply. And then this is just a one sentence response to these questions here on the bottom. Again, these are just all one sentence. They're not like long narrative. And it just really provides additional information that's not provided anyplace else. And we're moving on to the next quiz time with one question.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna post this up in a poll since we are a little bit over,
Mhm.
but if you submit the reporting tool, do you also need a narrative? Unlike in section B, this one is false. As long as you complete that reporting tool, there is nothing else required in section C. We've built it all into that little one pager. Okay. Now you're welcome to put other stuff in section C, that extra info from your executive summary, that extra info from section A. Maybe you were featured in an article, or maybe you want to show off your website or a cool video you made. You can put as much info in there as you want in addition to the required info. But as long as you complete that little, not even a full page document, that's everything you have to put in section C. So a little bit different. All right, top tips. Upload it as a PDF. Just like with the other parts, G5 really only knows what to do with a PDF. And as you're completing that tool, don't make it more work than it has to be. We're just looking for a complete but succinct answer. You'll notice some of them even really stipulate, like, we just need a sentence. So don't feel like it has to be an essay project. Just give us the basic answer, and that's fine. And then finally, remember that you can put all that other info in there as well. Just make sure to save it as a PDF. And away we go.
Yep. And so I don't see any questions in the chat. So I'm going to just move forward. Again, if you have any questions regarding section C, go ahead and put it in the chat and we'll circle back. So what do you need? When you look at the form is already in G6, you see the cover sheet is already there. Again, you have to complete it, download it, print it out, get your authorized representative to sign it, and then upload it again. Also in G6 is section A. What you do need to use a form for is, again, you're going to need to upload that signed cover sheet, your executive summary, your section B narrative and optional budget reporting tool, or another tool that provides the same information, or another form that provides the same information, and your section C narrative or your optional section C tool. Right, so those all need to be uploaded. And remember what Sarah said at the end for section C, if you are going to be providing us with all the other wonderful goodies as part of your section C, some extra information and pictures and some great stuff, you want to make sure you're combining that all into one PDF and uploading it into the G6 system. So continuation awards, a final note about this. This is really started out as by saying the purpose of your APR is to determine if your program is making substantial progress, to make decisions about continuation awards. APRs are used in order for your program officer to make that determination. And so it's really important for you to use this to talk about all of the things you're doing, your challenges, and what you want to complete in order for your grant to continue. It's crucial that this gets submitted on time and has all of the important information in order for timely sort of decision-making for your program officer. OIE will update you about any carryover funds, carryover requests, as we get to that time. But again, take this time to really reflect on where you are at, both programmatically and financially, and make the adjustments necessary in order to really sort of have a fabulous year and accomplish as much as you can within your grant year. Again, it's really important that G6, like again, Donna said, she will be opening it up. You want to go in and check to make sure you can grab your cover sheet. Only the grant project director on record can access G6. So if there's been some recent program director or project director changes, you want to make sure that you are reaching out to Donna and or the OIE team to make sure you have all the information to be submitted to get that changed in G6. Again, the deadline is at 4:30, but really it's 4/29/59. At 4:30, it actually ends. And so you want to make sure you have that down in your calendar and you're making the adjustments for time zones. That is April 26, 2024. You will not be able to go into G6 after at 4:30 p.m. on April 26, 2024, Eastern time. You know, they don't care if I'm in Hawaii and it's 4:30 in Hawaii. That has closed long ago. And so you want to make sure you are getting your time zone correct. And hey, how about this? Do it 3 days before it's actually due, and then you don't have to worry about the time zone. And so important reminders, you do want to finalize and submit your APR and make sure that that's all great. You don't want to leave your APR in draft form. And so when you go into the G6 system, once you've uploaded everything and completed everything, you want to make sure you are going and collecting submit, and there should be an indication that you have actually submitted that. Again, just for a reminder, and if you have any questions regarding, let me go back, regarding that, you can always, again, contact G6 to just make sure that that's actually been submitted. If you're kind of like, I don't know if it went in, go ahead and contact G6 about that. Again, the due date, April 26, 2024. If you have the APR update, it will be due. You can go ahead and put this in your calendar already. It will be October 24th, 2024. If you shouldn't have any questions about that just yet. We will keep you informed and keep you updated. Again, keep attending your talking circles and or office hours to keep updated, or reach out to OIE. If at any time you want to like have some sit down time to work through this, you can go ahead and take advantage of technical assistance opportunities. Again, we have the office hours coming up. You can go ahead and ask any of your questions there. Also, let's see, the talking circle, we're still trying to finalize that date. We'll let you know when that happens. And that will be an all program APR talking circle, as well as you can go ahead and schedule some one-on-one coaching appointments. And so you can go ahead and complete a part of it, submit it to us and ask for some assistance. Or maybe you're just like, oh my God, that was a lot of information, Lenny. Can you like walk me through section A again? And we can go ahead and do that. We're going to put up the end of the event poll. Thank you for sticking with us. I know we've gone over time. I really appreciate you. Here's the end of the event poll. This feedback is really important to us. I really want to thank you again for sticking in with us over time. Go ahead and take a couple seconds to complete that feedback poll. As you're doing that feedback poll, I just want to again provide you any contact information that you need. Please reach out to Donna. There's her email there if you have any questions. Again, remember, with your financial reports, it is a report, like Sarah said. You are not submitting a budget revision in this APR process. If you do want to submit a budget revision, then that's a separate process, and you want to reach out to Donna. This shouldn't be the first time she's hearing about that. Really keep her informed about what's going on with your project. If you want technical assistance, go ahead and email the oie@seiservices.com, and we'll get on that, as well as, check us out on the OIE Indian Ed on X. Go ahead, and that we provide not just information about OIE programs, but really the larger landscape of Native American and Alaska Native education, and actually broader than that, indigenous education across our country. Thank you again for joining and for participating. We'll see you folks all later. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Aloha.